Mitt Romney's Mormon faith a deterrent to him being elected president? And if so, with which voters, conservatives or liberals, Southern Baptists or Catholics? Here to analyze all of this is the head of the Faith and Freedom Coalition, Ralph Reed. Good morning, Ralph.
Good morning, Allie. Good to be with you.
Nice to have you. So we heard Governor Romney mention his Mormon faith briefly in his convention speech. He doesn't talk about it that often. How big of an issue do you think it is this election with voters?
Well, I don't think it's a major issue, and I have to commend the Romney campaign because for those who were able to watch the coverage on Thursday night when they had those very moving and evocative testimonies by people who had attended a church with him in Massachusetts, he and Ann Romney, and the acts of compassion and charity and so forth. And I think if you look at the kinds of things, look, I don't want to diminish the theological differences between Mormons and evangelical Protestants. Those differences are significant and they have deep historic roots. But I think if you look at Mitt Romney's life and the way he's lived it in terms of being a faithful husband for 42 years, raising a wonderful family, helping those who were less fortunate or hurting, really going out of his way to touch other people with love and mercy and compassion, been a successful businessman, been involved in his community. I mean, isn't this what we want to teach our children to do? So I think the idea that there's a tension between evangelical voters and Romney over this is vastly overstated.
There's an interesting poll that I want to show you and our viewers. This was a Gallup poll, I believe, from June of this year, and it asked if your party nominated a generally well-qualified person for president who happened to be a Mormon, would you vote for that person? 90% of Republicans said yes. 79% of independents and only 72% of Democrats said yes. And then no, 24% of Democrats said no, they would not. Again, for a well-qualified person. What's going on with that?
Well, it looks like if you look at the polling, the last acceptable form of religious bigotry is directed against Mormons. And if you look at the Gallup data, Allie, from last year, it found that 43% of self-identified liberals said they wouldn't vote for a Mormon. That's a pretty astonishing figure when you look at the fact that the Senate Majority Leader, a Democrat, is Harry Reid, a Mormon. So they're basically saying we wouldn't even vote for our own Senate Majority Leader. There is bigotry directed at Mormons, but right now it's mostly on the left, and it appears to be, although, you know, you're going to get a debate on this, it appears to be because the Mormons have been in the forefront, for example, on the marriage issue. They were significantly active in the Proposition 8 effort in California in 2008. In terms of their political views, Mormons tend to be much more in line with faithful Catholics and evangelicals, and very secular liberal voters are reacting to that. And of course, the electorate's also breaking out among partisan lines. If you look at evangelicals, the opposite is happening. Pew Research Center says 71% of evangelicals say they're voting for Mormons today. I mean, voting for Romney today. That is a higher percentage of the evangelical vote than George W. Bush got in 2000.
Interesting. Well, it will certainly be interesting to see how all of this plays out. And if we do hear more about Mormonism in the weeks leading up to the election, Ralph Reed, thanks so much for coming in.
You bet.